You are now tuned in to the GNWY podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the GNWY podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Miller, and today, do not forget to like, rate, review, subscribe, do all the things so we can be able to get people's stories out more effectively. And today, we have none other than the long-awaited episode of the awesome people that's sitting right here, and we have Carey and Laurel. Everybody, make some noise for Carey and Laurel in the building. We have sound effects going all over for you. Tell the crowd to settle down. Yes,
That's funny.
They're amazing. So appreciate y'all coming. I know we've talked about this for a long time. We met in Dallas, just to give some pre-story of this amazing relationship. We met in Dallas, met y'all through Marcus Black. Shout out to Marcus. And y'all blew us away with y'all story. And so, for one, if y'all want to give a brief, elevator pitch of what you do right now, who you are, and then we'll get into it. So,
Sure. Cool. Well, I'm Carey. I'm Laurel's mother, and I've been a speaker for a really long time in the area of vision.
yeah,
So I want to help people get what I call their someday plan out of their head and literally onto paper so that they can set some goals they'll stick to.
yeah,
So I've been doing this unofficially for a little over 30 years. Officially, I started doing this 12 years ago, created my own content, started bringing people to workshops, and then
yeah.
brought them into coaching to help them get their vision out, and ended up working with a lot of entrepreneurs for a really long time because most of them, when I met them, had no vision for where they were going with their life and their business, which meant that I found that most of them were running really expensive hobbies. And so once I helped them get their vision clear with some timelines down, they could change all that.
Expensive hobbies. That's a good word for it.
Yeah, I said that once at a workshop, and I could see every head in the room whip up and went, oh.
right.
She nailed me.
Looking at their bank
busy
account
and broke.
like,
That's another thing I used to say.
busy
Busy and
and
broke. They're super busy.
Whoa.
Doing all the right things, but not making money. And so I've been doing that for a really long time. But a couple of years ago, I haven't shut it all down. I just stopped marketing it as an entrepreneurial coach. And now I want to really work more with young adults.
Perfect.
On their vision. So
Yes.
that's
Okay.
why I'm here.
Excellent, Carey. I appreciate you. Laurel?
Yeah, so honestly, I didn't think I would end up in a situation where I was speaking or doing podcasts or really doing stuff alongside my mom. It kind of came due to what we've been through in our lifetime. I watched my mom coaching people with their business, and it wasn't so much, it was lifestyle stuff, but we weren't really talking about the life stuff, the deep stuff. And so I watched her doing this all through really towards the end of high school into college. And along the road of that, we lost my dad when I was 20. So I was halfway through college to suicide. And then 3 years later, my brother as well, the same way. And so kind of within that, we started seeing how what my mom had been doing for a really long time of coaching people in their business vision was starting to play into, well, how are we helping people with just their life vision in general? Because that played such a role in people having hope. And, that turns into the impact of the mental illness, all of the above. So we decided in, 2019 to write the book. And at the time I was a wedding planner, and I was like, okay, this is my place. I'm going to stay here. I'm good. And so we decided to write the book. And I remember thinking, this book is going to go out there. Maybe like 5 or 10 people will read it. And then I'll just stay in my comfortable corner doing what I'm doing. And, God had other plans. He was like, no, we're going to have you guys sharing your book and your story on stages. Right. And so I did that alongside my mom, but then started kind of doing some of it individually for some of the young adults. And I remember being asked the first time, hey, do you want to speak? I was like, my mom's coming, right? Like, we're going to be together.
Yes.
I very much was like, it was just not what I thought I was going to do.
Around me when she's on stage.
Well, no, not necessarily. But, it was cool how it was like somebody was like, we want to hear what it was like being 20 going through it. We lost the same people, but very different experiences.
Right.
And then as you move through life, it's still different.
Right.
We were in different phases. So anyways, we're now at a place where we speak together, we speak individually, and as always are sharing our book that we really created as a blueprint for people to walk through grief and just life.
The book's called Keep Looking Up.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. So for the people out there, we already just dropped a bomb. I mean, that's a huge pivotal moment. You said you were what age?
20.
And you were
age-wise?
Yes.
Well, I'm not going to tell you that. I'm just kidding.
20
I don't know. This was 9 years
22.
ago that we lost my husband. So
that's wild.
I'm 61 now. So
Yeah, 50.
and then 3 years later we lost her brother. He was 25.
That is a lot. So you said two different perspectives, and that's why I love to, because I don't think a whole lot of people usually lump y'all in probably together, and I don't think that gives y'all justice to what y'all went through, because even people out there, they deal with their own personal stuff individually, right? And then whenever we go to these assemblies and stuff or experiences, and we're casting this net of hope and empowerment and all that kind of stuff, it's like, but everybody gets hit differently. Right. So if y'all are able to individually, kind of share kind of what you went through just specifically during that moment individually.
You want me to start on
Sure.
that? Okay. I'll touch base at least when my dad passed, because being only 20 at the time, I was fortunate to where I hadn't experienced anything like that in life. So I very vividly remember the moment, because my brother had called me to tell me that my dad had passed, and I was in Oklahoma here now, and my family was in Colorado. And so I was physically disconnected already. And so trying to put myself in the moment of what was happening when I wasn't even there, and not being aware. It's like your brain is trying to process what's happening, but it's so far and so unfathomable. Yeah. That's a big word. I describe it as if the veil of ignorance was lifted, where I had 20 years of this, oh, my family's perfect and as perfect as it can be. Right. And I physically felt like this veil had just come up, where I was like, wow, I now am experiencing hard life stuff. And all of my roommates at the time that were with me in that moment physically, I kind of looked at them and I was like, they don't know what to do with me right now, because I was young going through this big loss. And so I started really seeking out other people that were young like me, that had lost parents, that had gone through that, because I was so lonely but surrounded by people. And that was hard, because as you get older, it's, I guess, more common for people to lose their parents, more naturally or whatever. But a 20-year-old who just got a call that their dad had taken his life, I was like, wow, I'm the only person in the room knowing what to do right now. So I kind of secluded myself a lot. I didn't want to deal with it. I started actually lying to people about how my dad died, because I was away and they didn't know my family, and I just didn't want to be known as that person. Right. Yeah. So I kind of ignored it.
Like a shame type feel, or what is it?
I think I was more nervous about people's reactions. Okay. Because I didn't know how to process it myself. Yeah. So I felt like if I was going to sit down with somebody and they're like, oh, what do your parents do? Or, natural college conversation, I guess. If it came up that my dad had passed or whatever, I'd be like, oh, it's just, a heart attack, something nonchalant where somebody's not going to ask questions or not look at you like, oh my gosh. So I avoided that, because I didn't even know how to process it. So I'm like, I can't help you with processing that. Right. It took a long time for me to be okay with admitting what I had gone through,
Definitely. Yeah. And then when you found out that your brother passed not too long ago, what did that feel? Just like another scab ripped off, of a healing process, or what did that,
Well, kind of ironically, I guess, if that's the right word, that was at the point, so it was 3 years out, and it was the first time that I felt like I had pulled myself out of the hole of my dad dying. Literally within months, I remember saying to Ethan, my now husband, man, I feel like I'm finally coming to the other side of things. And so when my brother died, in full transparency, I was angry, because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm all the way back to square one. And I remember thinking, I can't do it again, but I have to, because this is what's happening. I do think though, and I don't know if we'll dive more into this, but I was more aware that my brother was struggling than I was that my dad was. Wow. So yes, it was shocking, but there was a lot more going on that I was aware of. Yeah. So it wasn't necessarily I just got smacked in the face as much. Right. Still yes, but in a different way.
For sure. Definitely. And we're going to get back into some of the points that you were talking on. And so, but I would like to, perspective, Carey. Yeah. I know.
Well, it's, similar perspectives. Laurel, of course, was in college. I was in Colorado. She had to go back to a community that she was already in. And same thing with me is that, in Colorado, because I grew up there, my husband grew up there, we met in high school. We raised our kids there. We had a huge community of people there. Yeah. Very engaged neighborhood, very involved in our church. And it was a whole new shift in everything. Yeah. First thing, we had a house that we had just moved into 2 years before, smaller house, and The only people allowed in the house was Laurel and her girlfriends that came with her sorority sisters, my son and his friends, and some family members. And there were so many people who wanted to come and see us. And I joked that we literally built a moat around this house with no drawbridge. Because we were just trying to process all of this. And the looks that we would get, as Laurel mentioned, is, the first thing they do is they look at you and just, they can't even process how to deal with you or what to say. I remember for a really long time, I couldn't even go to the grocery store across the street from our neighborhood, walking in the neighborhood, because if neighbors saw me or they drove by, they just didn't know what to do. So yeah, it was just kind of a surreal type of thing where you just, all of a sudden, your identity changes. We became that poor family, right? So we learned a lot from when my husband passed. We had a huge memorial service for him. And I don't know, there was 200-300 people there. And we let people just literally hug us to death. Poor Laurel. Not a hugger.
Not a hugger.
Yeah.
That was like my worst nightmare.
She literally ended up in the bathroom almost like in an anxiety attack.
I was panicking.
Oh, I believe it, yeah.
Like a line
That's
of
a
people.
So
I was like,
hard
no.
that people didn't know what to do. They're crying. Asking questions. So when my son passed, same thing, total shock. Although Laurel did say we knew. I knew my husband was struggling a little bit, but never in a million years would we have imagined that either one of them would have taken this step.
Right.
But when Cole passed, we had a memorial service, and we came in at the last minute. And the second it was done, we walked out escorted. And then there was only a handful of, a small group of people that were invited for a reception later on, because we learned that we knew how people were going to react.
Yeah.
Especially now that this was the second time this has happened for us. So we dealt with some things similarly. Yeah. But then differently also, because the difference in the relationships we had, obviously, losing my husband, different thing than losing your dad. And we had to work on that together to understand that we were processing things differently.
Ooh, yeah, I bet that was different.
Yeah.
So what was that whole thing? Like, y'all just had to overly communicate, or like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can attest this too. We've definitely gotten to a different level of having, I think, sometimes some tough conversations together of, especially for me too. Like, I got engaged a month after Cole passed, and that was not with any intention of like, oh, your brother just died, let's get married. Ethan already was planning to propose, and like that was a whole other conversation of, do we go forward with this? But just all of this, and us just having tough conversations of meeting in the middle of knowing that I'm much more of an external processor, and my mom's much more internal, but also pushing each other in the right ways to continue to heal in the right ways, if that makes sense. I don't know if you want to touch more on that.
Yeah, we had to learn to have a whole lot of compassion for each other first. Yeah. And we so after Cole passed, I was living in Arizona, Laurel was here, and so I ended up coming out here and staying for a while. Yeah. And stayed with them, and we were just kind of dealing with the shock, and I went, like Laurel said, very internal. Laurel started going to some counseling, and I didn't do that until later on. And that's one of the things we wrote in the book. So we wrote 11 chapters in the book on what we learned in the process. Yeah. And one of the things that we learned is that people have to deal with things in their own way and be okay with that. Right. We had so many people try and give us advice, especially me. Especially after my husband died, everybody said to me, okay, don't do anything. Don't make any sudden moves. Yeah. Don't sell the house. Don't move. Well, I did all of that because it's what I needed to do. Right.
You figure it out as you go. I mean, you can't.
Nobody has a plan.
No, not a perfect blueprint. No. And we joke too. Like I've figured out with my counselor, I like to work out for stress relief, and it's like the crazy psycho like warehouse flipping
CrossFit,
tires thing, CrossFit.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, Mom, let's do it. I'm like, you feel so good after.
Right.
My mom's like, what? I'm gonna do my Pilates.
Going to Zumba.
Yeah.
Do my Pilates.
Right.
But we're very different in that way.
But I'll catch myself.
She's just monster in and out. Yeah.
But I'll catch myself. I'm like, Mom, you're gonna feel great, and I just have to know. I'm like, that's not her thing. Which silly example, but there's other things
I've gone
too.
a couple of times.
Didn't reluctantly.
I want to see Carey in the CrossFit gym.
I can do it. I just don't enjoy it, especially when she's doing it in 105 degrees.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Oh, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't
No.
believe that. Yeah.
We need air conditioning. Laurel.
But, you know, even as a silly example, it was things like that, though, where I was like, that helps me,
Right,
but
right,
that's
right.
not going to be my mom's thing.
Yeah.
And I think I try to get better about this, too, if I'm such a fixer. And I've learned this, too, of, I think when you lose people in the way that we've lost them, anytime anybody else is struggling, and I see this with any of my close friends, with my mom, anybody, I instantly try to fix it. Because my mind is like, oh, no, if you don't fix it, you can't save them like you couldn't do with
Right.
them. And
Yeah.
I've had to learn to let that go. Like even some friends that I have that are just going through a rough spot, they start to vent to me and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have to figure out how to fix this.
Trigger.
So then I
Yeah,
start
yeah.
suggesting all these things and I'm like, okay, I hate when people do that to me.
Right.
So why am I doing that? So I've had to learn that with my mom is like, and again, I'm not perfect at this, but finding a place of like, okay, we're going to gently suggest some things, but like that's not you, like trying to learn how to balance that a bit.
Yeah.
Because you just want to fix it for other people.
Definitely. Yeah. So, man, okay. So there's a lot of different ways we could go, but, so right now, like how long has it been since like, I guess the last one, so Cole, how long has it been since, Cole?
6 years.
6 years. Okay. And right now building, or you were already doing the speaking engagements before all this, right? Okay. So, okay.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like I'm about to ask a lot of different questions, but I don't want to jump around a lot, but I do want to ask, like, what got you into the speaking stuff even before, like, you know, all of this major life change?
You know, it's kind of a progressive story. So when I was about Laurel's age, I was doing what we were all told to do, which is go to school, get the degree, and get the good job, and do the 9-to-5 thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was not doing that well. I was changing jobs every 2 years because I just didn't like the 9-to-5
Yeah.
thing. So I had a mentor tell me, you know, you can create your life to look like whatever you want it to be. You just have to get really clear on what that is. And so I took a day off of work and with a legal pad of paper, because this was the 80s,
Yeah.
I wrote out very clearly
Yeah.
what I wanted my life to look like, where we were living, what kind of mom I wanted to be. I knew that I wanted to be working from home, especially when we started a family. So I wrote a bunch of ideas around what I thought that might be.
Yeah.
And literally on the last line of one of those pieces of paper out of the blue, total God thing, I wrote that someday I wanted to teach other people how to write their vision and how to goal set. And so I unofficially started doing that, like I said, with my first company that I jumped into when I was pregnant with Laurel, because I built a really big team of leaders in the industry of network marketing and had to teach them how to write their vision on paper.
Yeah.
And then 12 years ago, when my husband and I became empty nesters, I decided to, like I said, start doing workshops on it to the public. And so that just kind of took off. So then I became a speaker in it. I wrote my first book called Vision is Victory, which is a workbook to help people write their vision.
Let's go.
And started getting asked to speak and coaching, and then launched my own podcast finally last year, which people have been asking me to do for
Let's
a long
go.
time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's very professional. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for being
Yes.
on with me.
Of course.
So that's progressively how I ended up getting here. Now, what happened when Ross, my husband, died, and then Cole, is it became a whole different shift on why I do what I do.
Right.
Now, the underlying passion behind it is we know that people who become depressed, anxious, suicidal, is that they've lost their vision. They have no hope.
Yeah.
And so now I really want to, as I mentioned earlier, work more with young adults because I can feel that generationally, they are really struggling with this.
Finding a vision, right? Yes.
All the things, not knowing who they are, not happy with their jobs. You know, they follow the path they were told to do.
Yep.
Laurel talks more about this of get the good grades, get the good degree, go get the job. And most of them are coming out with that and getting the job, and 6 months into it, looking around going, okay, so this is it?
Now what?
Yeah.
Right.
Not happy, not knowing how to build friends. Hi, thanks to very isolated. Loneliest generation is our young adults.
100%.
Statistically, yes.
We can build a good following, but we can't build a good friendship.
Isn't that so true? So that's why I know God planted that seed for me in 89 that was.
Yeah.
Was because he knew what was coming. And that
Wow.
this is what I'm supposed to be doing now.
It puts a little more urgency into it.
Totally.
A little more compassion, yeah. Because I feel that vibe what you were talking about earlier is like you want to. My whole thing is like mine is not necessarily like the fixing part of it, but it's like more of the saving part of it. It's like, yo, I really want to get to you before whatever, you know. And so even Taylor, his dad passed from suicide as well. And so so this whole thing resonates, obviously. And then also this is the month of suicide prevention. And so you know, for people that and we're going to be doing a lot of walks every weekend. We have a walk that we're doing. But like whenever we show up to these places of walks, is like people that have lost somebody to it, or maybe a distant person that's lost somebody to it, or, you know, they struggle with it. So it's like for anybody that y'all would want to, you know, speak to and like directly speak to their situation, you know, if let's say let's just talk on y'all's part. If you know what I'm saying, if y'all are talking to somebody that has lost somebody, you know, to suicide, what would be the first things you say to them?
Well, it depends on what you want to address. I guess the first thing that came to mind is their own healing. And it's speaking to my 20-year-old version of myself with a lack of vulnerability. You know, it took a long time for me to actually say it out loud to somebody else of how my dad had passed. And it was ironic that I was talking to somebody who had lost her dad the same way, and I had no idea. And I'd known her we were on a committee together in college, and it just was one of those God conversations where for some reason we started talking about our families, and it turns out she'd lost her dad the same way. And I remember it was the first time that I was like, okay, like maybe I'm not the only other 21-year-old going through this. And so I remember when I wanted to really start amplifying that, and it made this specific post, and I think it was when Reels like had first come out, and the book was kind of going, and I had spoken like one time, and I was like, what is happening here? I remember thinking, I'm just going to make this reel sharing that I've lost my dad and my brother to suicide, and just sharing simply that this was my story, and that I'm wanting to put it out there for somebody else. And the response I got to it was insane. Whereas other people were so desperately seeking other people to walk through the healing process with, that I was like, oh, okay. And it's still a challenge even now, you know, 6 years after Cole had passed, and 9 for my dad. It's still hard because it's like, I don't necessarily want this to be my story. Because nobody wants to admit that these men, especially in my life, that were these strong people I looked up to, passed this way. But it was interesting that when you have vulnerability, that's how you start connecting with people more. And I do think there's a trend in a good way. I know trends aren't always great, of people starting to see the power in that. Of yes, we are isolated due to a lot of factors, but there's powerful things coming out of social media. There's a lot of bad stuff, but I think that's helping, starting to connect more people and feeling better about talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. What about you? What are you thinking?
Of what I would say to somebody?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, what's interesting is we get people reaching out to us all the time. Right? Facebook message, Instagram, I mean, all the things, because we are very open about our story.
What
do I do? I've got my son struggling. I just met a man, as a matter of fact, last week at an event, that was talking to me about how worried he is about his 20-year-old who's just really drifting through life right now, right? I gave him some very unsolicited advice, but I think he took it home with him. So one thing that has helped me the most are being around other people who, like Laurel said, have always also lost loved ones, not necessarily to suicide like we've been through. I found an organization last year called Helping Parents Heal. It's a huge organization based out of Arizona, tens of thousands of members across the globe. And they had an event last August that I went to, and there was 900 of us, and we literally took over this hotel. And it was it gave me so much peace to be around other parents that were going through their own journey like I am. And to see how we're all going through it differently, to have compassion for each other. And most of all, the biggest message in this group is how much our loved ones are still with us. And so that's the message that I like to pass on to people, is what has helped me the most is learning more about that, learning more about where they are right now and how they are still connected to us. And this was all a part of a bigger plan, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Man, it's crazy how, because I was talking about this on another podcast too, is like, it's crazy how you feel so alone even when there's so many people around you. And there was a lot of that, even personally, like through my story, that's what I was going through, because and so that's why I love connecting with you guys, because like y'all are inspirations in the way of, because there's a lot of people who go through these type of situations and do not, you know, end up, you know, unfortunately where y'all are, you know what I'm saying? I'm like creating a book, creating organizations, being able to speak to other people. And so some of those like vulnerable moments end up taking away their voice, you know? And so I'm very honored and great to know y'all. And so thank y'all for what you do. And so what is something that y'all are doing right now or striving to be? I know you said you're doing the young adults right now. So what is there anything collaboratively that y'all are working toward, or is there anything individually that y'all are working toward right now?
Do you want me to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
I will say for me right now, so I, as you guys know, had my second son about
Congrats.
Yes. Another boy, 6 months ago.
He came out doing CrossFit.
Truly, it's funny though. He just is, he's a little chunk. That has just been honestly my main focus right now. And I could always say like, oh, just a mom, but like, man, raising them is the best.
No, you got two too.
I got two wild boys, but I'll tell you what's ironic about this too is raising men, having the gift to do that. I know it's such a God thing that I lost my dad and my brother and I now have two boys. Wow. Like, I don't think there's any coincidence in that, but I take it with such, I don't know what the right word is. Not pride, but I take it very seriously, I guess, of really raising them to be emotionally aware. Yeah. Because I do genuinely think that it's so rampant, much more with men. It's not that women don't struggle with mental illness, but so much with men. And I see it now, even with my 3-year-old, the conversations and the way we talk about emotions. So I'm like, it doesn't sound like a huge job where I'm not on this stage speaking or whatever, but I'm taking that so seriously now because it's such a gift to be their mom and to be raising men to change this generation of them not being able to be emotional.
That's real. Yeah.
Yeah. He'll say to me sometimes, like, Ethan and I were having a conversation last night, not even towards each other. We were passionately talking about something else. Like, it wasn't us.
Passionately means.
Yeah. We were definitely not arguing. I don't even remember what it was. It was like, honestly like a joking manner, but Price picked up on that. And he looks at me and goes, Mom, are you frustrated with Dad? Aww. I said, no, I'm not frustrated. We're just joking and talking. He said, it's okay, Mom. It's okay. I was like, I'm not frustrated, buddy. I'm like, we truly are joking.
That's
a little guy with very big emotions.
Yeah. So we're working on harnessing that.
No, he's amazing though. Because we hang out. It's not like I just creep on your face. Yeah.
Yeah. We were having a serious conversation the other day in the kitchen, and he was there. Yeah. And he started picking up on that I was getting upset or something. I don't know. I got emotional.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he looks at Laurel and he goes, Mom, I think Cece's frustrated now.
And he said something too where he was like, Mom, Cece's crying. I said, well, it's okay to cry. He said, yeah, it's okay to be sad.
Yeah, it's okay to be sad.
It's okay to be sad.
That's amazing. Yeah. No, it's real. I mean, like teaching our kids and stuff and even during 2020, I was going through a life transition as well. And so, and Jet is kind of the same way. And he's pretty amazing on picking up those now and stuff. Just because we went through a whole year and a half ish to, just be together, and it was just him and I. And so there's been multiple times that he was like, "Why are you crying?" Like that type of thing, and like he could pick up on those. Yeah.
They really can.
It's so dope, man. I love it. And so, but you also are fibbing a little bit because you just got off of a pretty big stage.
Yes.
So tell the people what you done did.
So I just
who you confronted,
True. Yeah, I'm a little.
Came out of a whole
the video
system.
has not come out yet. I'm a little nervous, but I got to do a TEDx.
Congrats.
TEDx talk, and it was crazy because speaking of vision, I had it very clearly written that I wanted to do it before my 30th birthday, and I'll be 30 in January. Wow. And I will tell you, when they offered it to me, I was 6 weeks postpartum, and I was like, oh my Lord. I was like, what am I doing? I'm like 6 weeks after having a babies.
Yeah.
When you have to memorize it so perfectly, it's not like you get up and share your story. It's very precise. Right. And it was like brief bit about your story, and then who are you calling out? And I talked to scary.
Tell who you called out, man.
Yeah, I literally called out the entire school system, more so challenging them. So I'm very intrigued what happens when it goes.
Very passionate about that too.
I'm excited for when it goes on YouTube. I'm preparing myself with some thick skin, but I called it out in the sense that we're failing kids because we're majority of kids are at school, 5 days a week, whatever it is, 6 to 8 hours ish, and there's no teaching of, what do you want to do with your life and who do you want to be? It's just like, oh, you want to be a firefighter? Like, cool, let's figure that out. Not that that's wrong, but we're not leading them in the right direction. We love firefighters. Yeah. But there's no teaching a vision or whatever. I'm like, if they're already going to a structured school, and I know that is the best option for some families, not everyone can homeschool and do all of that. Why not start implementing it into schools then? Yeah. The families that want that structure but want just some better things taught, why are we not doing that? Right. So it'll be interesting
Yeah,
when
yeah.
it comes out.
I love and very support this side of it too. And then something that we've noticed too on the other side of it too is the thing that you were just talking about is the parent side of things. Because like you could send your kids to a very structured, place and everything, and it like be great for the kid, but then he goes back home, he or she goes back home, and now he or she's back into a loose environment or like single parent home, which obviously isn't bad, but it's like it's going to something that's not structured, and
not
so
healthy.
so it's amazing that y'all are combating both sides of it, and so I love that. Congratulations on your
Thanks.
TEDx. Yes, you were on TED, or you got off something too big though.
I have not been on TEDx.
You're just constantly traveling.
I just speak in different places here and there.
Because she loves Oklahoma.
Her favorite place to
Her
be.
favorite place is the
We're not dissing on
OKOC.
Oklahoma today.
Make her Oklahoma ambassador.
Love it. Oh my! We give her the keys to the city. Oh my goodness!
They're like,
That's
Carey Conley
funny.
loved Oklahoma so much that she's gonna be the ambassador.
She gets a picture right next to David Stitt or David Hole or something.
Yeah,
That'd be
yeah.
amazing.
That's
Yeah.
so funny.
So you're constantly all over the place though. So tell the people like currently what you're doing right now.
Well, the podcast that I launched last November is doing really well. So it's called
Yeah.
Moving Through and Beyond. So I continue to work on growing that, the following, the subscribers, all the things, and getting on bigger stages.
Yeah.
I have a team now that I've hired that's working on that.
Yeah.
And starting this community that I wanted to start for many years now for young adults.
Yeah.
I finally think I found somebody last month when I went to Dallas. Randomly, I went to this event not knowing why I was going. I just felt I was called to go. And I think I found somebody who wants to collaborate with me on that. So,
Nice.
and I would love for
Okay.
Laurel to be involved in it, of course, but she's a little busy.
I got my 10 hours a week of childcare.
Right.
That's what's up. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's what's up. What is the thing, or do you have a name for it for the young adults?
We don't
thing?
yet.
Okay.
We're tossed around a couple really fun ideas.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and how it's going to be facilitated, the platform, all the things. So stay tuned.
Are you gonna be throwing your own events, or like how's that work?
Possibly.
Oh, okay, yeah. We'll disclose
More
it
to
later.
come.
Yes, excellent. Okay, cool. Well, I'm really excited. Obviously for the things that y'all got going on, and even involvement with Gen Y and all the kind of things.
Well, we love what
So-
you're doing, Jordan, for the kids.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
it. We're out here. So yeah, we love it. So if there's one more thing, well, actually, go ahead and tell the people where they can follow both of you at. And then if there's like one thing that you can leave these people with like an encouraging one-liner or something that you can, empower these people with. So
I have a website, it's just careyconley.com. And I have a book, the first book that I mentioned, called Vision is Victory. It's a workbook that literally, very simply, people can take it and learn how to write their vision like they've never written it before. And I wanted to give your audience a free downloadable version of that.
let's go.
So you can
You hear that,
text-
audience? All three of y'all,
Yeah.
3 cameras. Yes. Get this free stuff.
Yeah, so text the word victory, all in caps, to 26786, and you'll get that book.
Perfect. Wow. Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, so I'm mostly on Instagram. It's just laurel.wilson. I try to stay as active in my life. You can see my kids on there.
Yes.
And just kind of sharing where I am speaking if I am here and there. And
Yes.
yeah, all over Instagram. Facebook, I'm like, it's all the old relatives that come out of nowhere. So I'm like, I'm going to stay on Facebook. I'm going to stay on Instagram.
Old relatives.
That's funny.
That's hilarious.
I get on there sometimes and I'm like, nope, we're going back to Instagram.
Right. They just talk
Oh,
about family stuff.
Dissing the
Right.
old people.
No, nothing wrong with it, but it's like the people that comment, I'm like, all right.
Excellent.
Yeah,
That's
truly.
amazing. You two are super amazing people, and it's been definitely a God thing that we met, and very ironic, timing and everything. So, so really appreciate you guys. Be sure to follow them on anything and everything, and thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Like, rate, review, subscribe, do all the things so we can be able to get Laurel and Carey's stories out more effectively. So, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Peace.